Hi everyone, welcome to the virtual version of the NC State Feed Mill Education Unit. My name is Marissa Herkler. I am the Extension Agent for Animal Food Safety, so my job is to help feed mills in North Carolina comply with food safety regulations. I also give a lot of tours at the feed mill and have been working for several years to develop a virtual tour for our unit. With the help of a grant from the NC State Distance Education Learning Technology Applications Group, or DELTA, we were able to put this together. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started with the tour. You are looking at the dollhouse view of the feed mill. Since we are hosting the tour virtually, we don't have to walk in between talking points and spaces in the mill. I will be talking you through the process of making feed, so we will go in order from beginning to end. This is unique to the virtual tour. If we were doing a walking tour, we'd have to go in the order the mill is set up. To get to the different areas of the mill, I will return back to the dollhouse view so we don't have to spend as much time navigating to each spot. If you would like to look around more after the tour, visit our online virtual tour hosted on our Feed Milling Extension website, feedmilling.ces.ncsu.edu. We will also be watching several videos throughout the tour. If you cannot read the text on the videos, no worries. I will be reading the text aloud. We are keeping the videos small so you can see what happens in the mill while looking at the equipment we are talking about. If you would like to watch the videos full screen, you can watch them on our Feed Milling Extension website, feedmilling.ces.ncsu.edu. Throughout the tour, you will see several hotspots that look like blue, green, or red buttons on the screen. Red buttons are for videos, which we will be watching. The blue-green buttons are for text. We will not be looking at the blue-green buttons, but feel free to explore them on your own. Our feed mill has three main objectives: to serve a role in teaching, research, and extension. This mill was opened in October 2007 and replaced the on-farm feed mills on the other animal units. The feed mill currently feeds pigs at the Swine Education Unit, chickens at the Chicken Education Unit, turkeys at the Tally Turkey Education Unit, and dairy cows at the Dairy Education Unit. We also make feed for swine, poultry, and dairy cattle at external research units and universities. We currently have 2 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, and several students that help make feed each week. We run 5 days a week, 8 hours per day. Throughout the tour, I will be walking you through the processes to make feed from receiving to loadout. As we go through the tour, think of how similar these processes are to baking. Let's start the tour in the control room. The control room is basically the brain of the feed mill. This is where the operators of the mill can control each piece of equipment using these computers. The feed mill was fortunate enough to receive an operating system upgrade a couple of years back, which included the use of external computers on the main floor that can also run the equipment. Basically, the staff can run the system through several stations either in the control room or outside on the main floor. This video on the control room shows a little bit about our operation and how we make feed utilizing student help as well. From the control room, the entire feed mill can be operated from receiving to grinding, mixing to pelleting, and storage to loadout. Employees and students teach each other the basic operations of the feed mill and the automation system work. In the control room, many records are also created and either stored electronically or printed out for filing. It is very important for the employees to maintain records in a feed mill. Feed mills are regulated by the FDA, so we are subject to inspection and record review. The control room is also a place for check-in when employees arrive in the morning. They go to their lockers to change into their personal protective equipment, or PPE. In our facility, we require everyone to wear safety toe shoes, a bump cap, and a radio for communication. Additionally, employees will wear tool belts to make sure that they keep their tools from falling into the system. Another important space in our feed mill is the manager's office. This is where the manager sits and can oversee the entire mill operation from their desk. The manager is responsible for overseeing employees as well as signing off on records that are generated throughout the day. The feed mill manager has many duties that help the facility run smoothly. The manager is responsible for checking off on diets and daily records, overseeing personnel and regulatory activities, and generally managing operations of the feed mill. In many facilities, the manager can monitor the operating system directly from the office, keeping in touch with the operation while completing other tasks. Now that we know how the facility is run, let's take a look at the feed making process, starting at ingredient receiving. The first process of making feed is receiving. Our incoming ingredients come in all different forms: bagged, bulk, or liquid. Bagged ingredients are received into the warehouse on the left of the screen behind the bins. Pre-ground ingredients, or ingredients that are received in larger quantities than bagged ingredients and smaller quantities than corn or soybean meal, such as poultry meal, are received into the bins in front of the warehouse on the left of your screen. Bulk ingredients are unloaded from the trucks into the pit in the warehouse in the center of your screen. The video we're going to watch next shows how trucks are unloaded into the pit and how ingredient samples are taken. Before unloading, truck drivers must verify their previous loads. Once cleared, they unload their ingredients into the receiving pit. Samples are taken and retained, and may be tested for things like moisture and contamination. The previous load is verified and samples are taken for analysis prior to unloading the trucks completely. The previous load has to be verified to make sure the truck was cleaned before hauling animal food ingredients, if a prohibited material was hauled in the trailer previously. We will now go to the quality assurance or QA lab inside the mill. Once ingredient or feed samples are taken, they are brought to the QA lab for further testing and analysis. When corn samples are taken from the trucks, they are brought to the QA lab so we can test the samples for moisture, aflatoxin, and DON. Aflatoxin and DON are tests for mycotoxins that can cause illness or death in animals and are carcinogenic to humans. We have to be especially careful when we bring in ingredients because our feed goes to the cows at the NC State Dairy, and their milk is used to produce Howling Cow ice cream, among other milk products sold by NC State or consumed by students. Moisture is also important to test for. We need to make sure we are getting what we pay for in our ingredients. If the moisture is too high, we are paying for more water than the ingredient. We keep samples of each of our bulk ingredients for 3 months, just in case we have to retest the ingredients for contamination. Other tests we run on feed or ingredients include particle size, which tells us the size of the ingredient particles after they are ground, mixer analysis, which tells us how efficient and effective the mixing process is, and pellet durability index, which tells us how durable our pelleted feed is. After bulk ingredients, such as corn, are received into the bins, some of them will need to be further processed and ground into smaller pieces before mixing with other ingredients. We have 2 machines that help us with this process, a hammer mill and a roller mill. The hammer mill works by spinning metal plates to break the ingredient into smaller pieces that can pass through different screen sizes. The roller mill works by crushing the ingredient using corrugated rolls. The different settings on the rolls dictate how small or large the ingredient particle size will be. We will now watch a video about grinding. The hammer mill will be on the right side of the screen in green, and the roller mill will be on the left side of the screen in blue. Some ingredients, such as whole grains, need to be ground before mixed into the feed. Depending on the desired particle size, either a roller mill, left, or hammer mill, right, is chosen. Each machine is inspected frequently to ensure proper operation. It is important to make sure we are getting the most appropriate particle size necessary for the species being fed. We might target a coarse grind to help build the gizzard muscles in chickens and turkeys, or a fine grind to help with the pelleting process. Sometimes we even use a combination of different particle sizes in the same diet. Now we can start to talk about how making feed is similar to baking in your own kitchen. If you think about the process of baking cookies, the major ingredient is flour. Flour is made from ground wheat. We basically have taken the grain, wheat or corn, and ground it up so it can be mixed in with other ingredients and be made into the final product. We're now in the premix room. In this room, students and staff pull ingredients that are in increments too small to be added by the automation system, or special ingredients that aren't used very often. The NC State Feed Mill Education Unit has about 700 different ingredients in the system. Most of these ingredients are not kept on hand and are ordered specially for projects that require special ingredients. We're now going to watch a video on the hand add process and how employees make that work with the automation system. Ingredients such as vitamins, minerals, probiotics, enzymes, and medications are measured by hand to be added during the batching and mixing processes. Each ingredient is weighed in a container and double-checked by the operating system. Once all of the ingredients have been weighed, a label is printed and placed on the container. This label is scanned to ensure the proper ingredients are added to the correct diets during the batching and mixing processes. The white bins on the right side of the screen are for non-medicated feed ingredients, such as vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and enzymes. On the back wall, medications are stored in yellow and red bins. Since we manufacture medicated feed, we have to reconcile our medications as we use them. This means we have to weigh the bags before we measure out the ingredients, then measure out the ingredients, and weigh the bag at the end to make sure the exact amount of medication goes into the feed. Now back to our cookie example. Think of the ingredients you would add in really small amounts to your cookie mix, such as salt and baking soda. Just like food for humans, many of our diets call for some of the same ingredients used in making cookies, minus all the sugar. We commonly use baking soda and salt in animal diets to make sure they get the proper nutrients they need to grow and be healthy. If you watch cooking videos on social media, you might see that people will pre-measure their ingredients out to make the process a little quicker. This is basically what we're doing in the premix room. We're measuring out the ingredients that are included in small amounts compared to the rest of the diet. After we've measured out the premix ingredients, we can move on to the batching and mixing processes. After our ingredients are ground into the right particle size and our hand-add premixes are pulled, we're ready to batch and mix. Batching is the process of measuring the ingredients in the scales and getting them into the mixer. We have several types of scales to help with this process. On the screen in front of you, you can see the major scale sticking up out of the floor behind the computer screen. Above it, you can see several pipes that lead into the major scale, which is directly above the 2-ton mixer. Major ingredients, such as corn and soybean meal, are measured in the major scale. These are the ingredients that take up the most room in the diet. In the case of making cookies, the major ingredient in the recipe is flour. The next type of ingredients are the minor ingredients. These are the ingredients that are added in smaller amounts than the major ingredients, but in larger amounts than what we measured in the premix room. The minor ingredients are measured in the weigh buggies because there is not enough room to store all of our minor ingredients inside the mill. Ingredients such as poultry meal, or whey, are considered minor ingredients. In our cookie recipe, these would be the granulated or brown sugars. The final dry ingredients we add to the mixer are the microingredients. Microingredients are the ingredients that are added in the smallest amounts. We use these microbins on your screen to add the most commonly used microingredients in all the diets we make. We supplement the microsystem with the microingredients from the premixed room. The microingredients are measured by the microscale under these bins. There is a screw inside each of these bins that pulls the ingredients down onto the scale one at a time to ensure accurate measurements. At the very back of the microsystem, there's a grate in the floor. This is where we put some hand-add corn to help flush the system, making sure the ingredients don't stick and make it into the mixer. Like we talked about in the premix room, the microingredients in your cookie recipe are the salt and baking soda. The microingredients we pulled in the premix room are added directly to the mixer, along with the ingredients in the weigh buggies, through the grate in the floor. This is one of 2 mixers in the feed mill and is used to make large batches of feed, up to about 4,000 pounds at a time. After all the dry ingredients are added to the mixer, in that order, we mix them for about 3 minutes so all the ingredients are evenly distributed. Once the dry ingredients are mixed, liquid ingredients, such as poultry fat or different oils, are added to the mixer. In your cookie example, the eggs and butter serve as the liquid ingredients. The liquid ingredients are added to the mixer last using spray nozzles to make sure it's evenly distributed in the diet and doesn't clump. If the fat was dumped into the mixer, like some of our dry ingredients, it would be very hard to mix the diet evenly and efficiently. Often, if a diet is going to be pelleted, we have to be careful about how much fat is added to the mixer. We can add the fat after the diets have been pelletized to help maintain a firm pellet. Adding fat after the diet has been pelleted can also serve as a pelletant, which means the feed tastes better to the animals. We have another mixer that we use in the facility to make smaller batches of feed. This is the 500-pound mixer. Everything we add to this mixer must be added by hand or by weigh buggy. Even though we don't use the automation system to pull the ingredients for us, we still add the ingredients to the mixer in the same order: major, minor, micro, liquid. Watch the video to learn more about how ingredients are added to the 500-pound mixer. The 500-pound mixer is used for small batches of feed. Ingredients are weighed by hand and in weigh buggies and then dumped into the mixer. Once mixed, the finished feed is discharged to a manual bagging system below. As you can imagine, the batching and mixing process is very similar to making cookies in your own kitchen. Just as with baking, you want to make sure your ingredients are added in the correct order and mixed well before baking. It probably wouldn't taste great if the salt was added before the flour and got stuck to the bottom of your bowl. The same goes with feed. Animals need these nutrients to be healthy, so we have to make sure that they get the most nutrition out of every single bite. As a research unit, we have the ability to take samples from several spots throughout the mill. Many projects require mash samples before the pelleting process to make sure the diets are stable and remain the same during the pelleting process. Finished feed samples can be taken from a sample port after mixing or after pelleting, depending on the final feed form. They can also be taken from feed bags or as the feed is being loaded onto the trucks. Watch this video to learn how we take a mashed feed sample after the mixing process. After mixing, samples are used for feed analysis, moisture determination, and to test mixer uniformity. This process may be completed multiple times during the mixer discharge period in order to obtain a representative sample or set of samples. The pelleting process means we are adding heat and moisture in the form of steam to the mash diet, then pushing it through a die to form pellets. A mash diet is a diet that is made up of ground ingredients. We feed mash diets to laying hens and immature animals, such as chicks and nursery pigs. Some animals, such as turkeys, start out with crumbled diets, which are diets that have been pelleted and then ground into smaller pieces to make sure they don't choke on large pellets. Pelleted diets are made to help reduce waste because it is much easier to eat pellets without dropping pieces on the ground. Mash feed tends to be much messier because the small feed particles will drop out of animals' mouths while they're eating, or they will toss it out of the feeder as they eat. We have two machines that pellet feed, a 1-ton on the left in green and a 10-ton pellet mill on the right in tan. Watch the video to learn more about the pelleting process. Mash feed is sent through a conditioner that adds steam to the feed to increase both temperature and moisture. Conditioned feed then enters the pellet mill where pellets are formed. Hot pellets are cut off the pellet die and fall into the cooler to have the heat and moisture removed. After exiting the cooler, pellets are either crumbled or sent to a bin ready for bagging or loadout. In order to improve feed conversion, feed is often pelleted to make sure animals are ingesting a complete nutrient profile when they eat. Pellet durability is really important to the pelleting process. Pelleting is the most expensive part of making feed because of the energy costs associated with generating steam and running the equipment. It would be pointless to spend this energy on pelleting to generate pellets that fall apart into mash. We have to be mindful of the ingredients and their particle sizes, as well as the amount of heat and moisture added to the diets during the process. The goal is to make pellets that can make it through the system, onto a truck or into a bag, withstand transportation and being put into the feeder to be consumed by the animals. Pelleting is also something commercial feed mills have to be very aware of. Consumers pay more for pelleted feed and expect to see that when they open a bag. Think of a dog or cat. If you open a bag of food and it's all dust or fines, you won't be very happy, and neither will your dog or cat. You expect to see a nice extruded product. In our cookie example, we have to be mindful of the form of ingredients added and the time and temperature the cookies bake in. If our ingredients aren't quite right, our cookies might fall apart, be too hard, or just taste terrible. The cooling process is also important in baking. As the cookies cool, the cookies become firmer compared to when they first come out of the oven. From here you can see the two bagging systems we use. If feed is made in the 500-pound mixer, it is discharged into the bagging system on the right. If we use the 4,000-pound or 2-ton mixer, we can bag it using the conveyor system on the left. Some feed is delivered to customers or farms in bags, and some is delivered in bulk. Watch the video to learn how we bag feed. Prior to being sent to the customer, some feed is bagged. A bagging scale is used to fill the bag with the desired amount of feed. Each bag is then labeled with the contents, any necessary feeding instructions, amount, and distributor information, and then closed using a stitcher. The bags are then placed on a pallet and wrapped for delivery. We will now look at how bulk loadout works. We have 3 overhead bins dedicated to bulk loadout. This means the feed goes directly onto the truck when it is finished. Watch the video to learn more about bulk loadout. Once the feed has been manufactured, it is ready to be delivered to the farm. Bulk feed is loaded through conveyance tubes into separate compartments on the truck. A loadout ticket is created so that the driver knows where each compartment needs to be delivered prior to leaving the feed mill. We've now reached the end of the tour. Be sure to reach out to me if you have any questions about the feed making process or the NC State Feed Mill Education Unit.